so welcome to another one of our marathon panel slash seminar talk type things. This one will be a little bit different because it kind of requires audience participation for it to work well. So we'll start off the panel. We'll do a brief introduction of who they are, what their experience is, and then Tony is going to go through the new marathon plans, which everyone's really excited about. And then it's open up to the floor. So we'll kind of try and act a little bit like MCs, so there won't be too many questions, and field questions to people that might be good for answers, but open it up to a discussion. So please think of questions and get involved, otherwise it will be a very short and quiet night. So yeah, we can start here.
Hi. Hey everyone, I'm Alice. For anyone that doesn't know who I am, I've done 6 marathons, range from Manchester to Belfast to Dublin to Loch Ness. That's it.
Hi, I'm Tony. I've done 5 marathons. Manchester, Chester. Those are the 5 actually, yeah. Switching between those. A few ultras, and I've been slowly working my way backwards down the distances. I kind of went the other way to what most people do. Some good experiences, some bad ones. Oh, and Barcelona, that was a bad one. That's it for me.
Hi, my name is Matthew Shaw. I've ran 13 marathons, of which I've raced 4 and I've paced 9. I think that's right. I've paced 9 3-hour marathons for Manchester and for London, so I've got a wealth of experience from not only pacing but from also sort of racing a little bit more towards the elite end. My PB is 2:25, so although that's quite a great feat, it still sort of hinders me a little bit. I still think at 41 I can still knock a couple of minutes off that, so Manchester next year I'm looking for a low 2:20, so fingers crossed.
Follow that. So, I'm Andy, for those of you who don't know. When Vicky asked me to do this, she basically sold it as, you're the guy that did everything wrong, so you're kind of here to tell people what not to do. So I've done 1 marathon earlier this year at the Loch Ness, which I was mentioned before, which was interesting. But I failed to do a couple of marathons as well, so I've kind of got some good ideas on where you can go wrong and maybe hopefully how to try it out. Maybe. Yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Malika, and just like Andy, Vicky sold this to me as how do you do a marathon when you're juggling work, kids, and a home life in general. So I've done 1 marathon, 2018 Manchester, and it's one of those where someone's gone from 5k park run to 10k to a half marathon, and then decided to just go for the challenge and do the marathon. So yeah, I've done 1.
I'm just going to check before we go any further that Brian is picking up everything. With the mic and stuff, that's okay. So we did buy some microphones, but then we realised that we didn't have an amp to go with it, so we're relying on us all projecting our voices, but of course Brian is filming, so I've got a mic on me, so when you ask your questions I'm going to repeat it back, not because I'm being a parrot today and copying you all, but just so that your questions are put onto the video for later on. So yeah, so I think we'll move over to Tony now and he can introduce the new plans. Like traditionally we've had the plans kind of drop usually the day after they're due to begin with a really ominous post in Coach's Corner, which I hope everyone's a part of because that's a really useful source of information. That group's been around for ages and it's got past comments on and moaning and when it gets really tough with marathon training we all seem to go to that group to look for help, so it's a really good group to be a part of, but also the training plans get posted there. So we wanted to do it slightly differently this year and introduce them properly with one of our coaches so that if you've got any questions about the plans that you could ask them today. So yeah, hand over to Tony for the plans.
So I'm a big fan of trying to keep it as simple as possible. Running is running and you can overcomplicate it sometimes. With all of the plans, there are 5 sessions to be completed within 2-week period. So try not to box off 3 sessions in 1 week and try and do another 3 another week. Sometimes that'll work, sometimes not, but 5 sessions over a 2-week period is usually a good footing for most. From the beginners, intermediate and advanced plan, the main variables that will change during those are mileage and intensity. So you might find that in the beginners, the intensity isn't as high, meaning that there's not a huge, massive volume of marathon pace every week, all the time. There's not a huge volume, some weeks of tempo or track stuff. You go to the intermediate and there'll be a nice waiver in between, and advanced is quite full on, if I'm honest. And I'm quite a fan of variety as well. So long runs, the Sunday long run from the beginners is going to be quite simple to follow. You'll be hitting some time on feet, so it's either going to be minutes or mileage, depending on what comes first for some of you, because it's quite a range from beginners. If we say do 20 miles for some beginners, that can be 5 hours. That's quite a lot, in reality, who's got 5 hours to spare if you've got a family life, etc. on a Sunday. So there's caveats to everything on that part. The intermediate and advanced, there will be mileage associated with targets that we want you to hit. Track sessions, so we're quite lucky in that we've got a whole host of sessions for you guys to come along to. Tuesday night is a staple. Tuesday night club, that's going to be tempo, interval style stuff on the plans. Then we've got Wednesday reps. I think some still do Thursdays. We've also got Friday track, and we've also got Matt's Saturday session as well, which you do that pretty
that'll be running week after this Saturday after the cross country champs.
So it's a case of fitting them in when you can. Although Tuesdays, Wednesdays have set things on, don't just stick to a Monday to Friday. Fit them in with the sessions that you can, and just try not to do 2 back-to-back hard sessions. It's not impossible, but it's not advised. You're not going to get the most out of each if you're trying to stop yourself or hit certain paces or efforts. When you've gone hard one day, they're likely to be able to go hard the next day for the set intensity and volume. Probably going to be pretty slim. I've put in half marathons in there, but they're a separate slide, and that is quite literally a list of half marathons that have been quite popular in the past to put into a marathon block, so got a good chance of PB. With that, I put a caveat in to say, well, not caveat, it's a bit of a plan to say what to do the week before your half marathon and what to do the week afterwards. And then just fit the half marathon in the plan, in the dates that work for you. Okay? There will be the obvious ones like Wilmslow, is always a popular choice. And again, it's just a case of reducing a little bit of volume and intensity the week before, mini taper in, ramping it back up on the other side of the week, depending on how you feel post half marathon. Does that make sense? I know I've spoken quite a lot at you there. It will make more sense when you see it as well. When you've got it in front of you, you'll be able to see.
How long are the plans, Tony?
From now all the way up till, so this week up into 17 weeks, I believe it is. If you're doing London, either just keep casual as you are now and pick up 17 in 2 weeks' time, so I think it's a 2-week difference, or by all means, start now and you can give yourself an added recovery week in the middle. So you, instead of having 1 recovery week, you have 2 recovery weeks. Because it does 2 weeks ramping, then you've got a 5-week block of sustained efforts, a 1-week recovery, and then a 6-week block of sustained efforts, and you've got a 3-week gradual decrease. It's not, I quite like a 10 to 14 day taper as opposed to a 3-week taper. So that's what I've gone with. But if you've done marathons before and you know that 3 weeks is better for you, do 3 weeks. If you know that certain sessions work better for you, do that session. This is a plan that would be great for you to follow, but if you've done marathons already and something just fits better for you, do that. Okay.
So it's only if you're what marathon are you basing it on then?
Manchester.
So you're basing it on Manchester. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, this one, for Manchester. That's a good point actually. Just doing
Is that 16 weeks from next week?
from this one.
It's 16 weeks from this week. Okay, sorry, I should do that.
No.
Because I know when 16 weeks out is from London,
Yeah.
but yeah, Manchester, right, okay.
Groups as well. There'll be plenty of pace groups throughout the whole plan, and where possible, I'd highly recommend doing it with groups. On some of the long runs, they're going to be pretty tough, and having groups there, having someone next to you is really, really beneficial. Even if you say nothing the whole way around, because just hurting, just having someone there helps. I think there's anything else that needs to be
I think on that, I think two nuggets of information that I would share that are definitely key. Stick to the plan and build a group of people around you. So whether that's somebody you run with on a Monday night, somebody on a Tuesday night, somebody on a Wednesday, make that commitment to meet that person or that group, because it'll get you out the door and it makes it so much easier. You can't do it by yourself, it's too hard. When you get to week 8, 9, 10, 11, and you're on your knees, you need that group around you just to drag you through those hard miles, because it will get hard. The early weeks, enjoy them, run easy, don't get excited, just enjoy the early weeks, because the latter weeks, they're hard. They're that hard. Build a team around you, and you can't go wrong. Just stick to it.
If you don't have a team, then don't worry, because there will be marathon training sessions probably on Tuesday and Sunday nights as well. So you find natural people will be doing the same sort of pace and distance as you, and you can start to build with you. So don't worry at the stage if you don't really have people, anything. That's all.
Yeah, they get put as part of the run leaders, so they will be posts out with people volunteering to take those groups, and it's something that you can volunteer to do. I mean, that's for a big part of it for me. I would always put myself forward as a leader because I knew I was going to be going out to do that run anyway. Didn't necessarily mean that I was at the front of the group. There'll be plenty of routes that we use regularly as a club anyway, so there's lots of routes that we've always kind of used for marathon training, so we've got a whole collection there. But yeah, you'll find that grows quite naturally. Starting from this weekend, there'll be leaders putting their name down to take the marathon pace groups, and don't worry too much if you don't know what pace is, because we try and do it so that the leaders are all taking the same route. So if you start out and you realise that 12 miles in, you need to drop back a bit, there's usually other groups doing the same route, so they can scoop you up and bring you into their group. So you will find in the first few weeks, you naturally find the groups that you can run with.
I would just say on the other side of that, if you get injured or sick, doesn't mean you have to try and make up the days that you've lost. That you need to listen to your body and give yourself time to recover, especially in the early weeks. You have time to make up the training, but it doesn't mean as soon as you feel better, you then have to go out and make up all of the miles that you missed, because you're only going to do yourself more damage and potentially prolong any illnesses to a point where you can't recover from it. So, especially in the early weeks, don't get too bogged down on hitting every single session, because you need to learn to listen to your body. 16 weeks, 17 weeks is a really long time to be committed to a plan.
Yeah, on that, I'm sorry, no, go on.
Do you have places in the plan? Well, I had two questions. Do you use VDOT for paces and stuff, or is it just how you use it?
So just to repeat that, do you use VDOT on the plan? So Tony might want to explain what VDOT is for those that have never heard of it before.
A rough estimate of what your paces should be during training. So easy, interval, tempo, marathon pace based on a race that you've recently done. You can use a simple thing as a 5k park run. Go out and hammer a 5k park run, bob it into the calculator, and it spits out your designated paces. On that, easy pace, please run easy. It's very tempting when you're feeling good and you've got a good group around you, just edge 30 seconds off that pace, and then you're kind of in no man's land. You're neither in a tempo pace, and you're not in a marathon pace, and you're not an easy pace, and that for me is a junk mile. Easy miles are there for base building and recovery.
And is there long ones as well?
There are a couple of long ones in there that are simply easy miles, time on feet, depending on the 5 sessions in the 2-week period. So there's a couple in there that will be 18, 20 miles, where you're going to head out and just sit easy pace. But then there are others where you're going to head out and you are going to do some warm-up miles and then get into potentially 4 blocks of 3-mile efforts, progression running. We kind of floating on calories that there's.
I forgot the Tuesday sessions.
Tuesday sessions vary depending on beginner, intermediate, or advanced, from either some marathon pace, half marathon pace, and tempo progression. And then you've got your Wednesday tracks, and your Fridays and Saturdays.
Really good opportunity to make sure you hit the right pace on Tuesdays is knees, pace that you need to be doing in the session. So just tying that back in a bit.
Just to finish on that VDOC, because I don't think it was explained, there is a link to it in Coach's Corner. I think it's been shared before, so I think it's in the files there, the link, or you can just Google it. But that's an easy calculator tool that will get referenced, especially if you go to things like reps or track sessions, because then your interval pace and that type of thing will be mentioned there. So it's a good tool to look at. It is mentioned in the group.
The address is on the plans as well. So the address is on the plans, so you just copy and paste it and there you go. So is that.
Can I just ask a question as well? Talking about Sunday runs and long runs and everything, we always, when we do it as a club, we always tend to stop. Do the panel think it's beneficial to stop? Because we stop and regroup. If we're training for a marathon, you're not going to stop and regroup when you do the marathon, are you? So I don't know whether it's better to stop, whether it's better not to stop. What do people think?
Just to repeat your question for the camera, is it beneficial to stop on your runs when you're doing your long runs? And I'll open it up to the panel.
In an ideal world, I would say no. But in real world, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to get to road junctions, unless you're just going to get up and down the canal, up and down the flute. We've all done that, and in which case you can stay constant. If there's a couple of sessions that you think this is, 18, 20, 22 miles, that you do just want to really aim for continuous running, then you've got to plan your route, and it might be a boring as hell route, but you'll get the session done.
How long do you stop for?
We just stop and regroup a minute, 2 minutes.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah. I was looking forward to it.
Unless Sunday's a marathon pace session, it doesn't matter. Just run it at whatever pace you want, have a conversation, stop, do whatever you want. I don't think Sunday really matters. If it's a session, that's completely different. If it's easy running, enjoy the minute, 2 minutes, and hope it's 3 or 4.
On Malika, what do you think about that?
Well, I was going to ask, does that mean the Sunday run could be not necessarily a long run in the plan? Is there another time that you're doing a long run other than a Sunday?
You can put the long run whatever day you want. You'll just have to move some of the sessions around.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to do all my stuff on a Saturday.
Yes.
Not many people would, but
Well, that's what our experience has been. The 10 to 11 pace group meet on Saturday, and that seems to become a more comfortable time to do. Add park run in it, meet a bit earlier, and then that way you're adding more miles in. Sunday run then becomes another session to go and do your runs. Long runs have been Saturdays
yes.
for a few of us.
I mean, the Sunday runs are there as an option because the club's going to put them on, but obviously it doesn't mean that you have to use those as your long runs. If you've got good people that they want to go after this and pace, then just
Andy, we can hardly hear you at the back here, I'm afraid.
You are very quiet, and we definitely need the mic for you.
They're equally quite noisy.
Can I just ask on that though, because if you do a long run on the Sunday, often on the plans Monday is a recovery day, and my thinking was always that after your long run you should perhaps have a recovery day. Is that general thinking?
Just before that's answered, so Anne's question was, should you have a recovery day after your long run?
Defined recovery day. I'm trying to come from a different angle. Monday would definitely be an easy run. So if that's a recovery run, then yes.
Or a rest day.
Or a rest day. Personally, if I ran hard on a Saturday and I ran long on a Sunday or vice versa, I won't run hard Monday and I won't run hard on Tuesday. So it'll either be a rest, a recovery, or an easy run. And then Wednesday again will be, if I'm doing a marathon build-up, I tend to do my long stuff. So I tend to do my sessions on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and I will run long on a Sunday. But what I do, I wouldn't expect a lot of others to do because I get a bit crazy at the weekend. But yeah, you need that Monday, Tuesday to recover, otherwise you're just going to be so tired for the rest of the week. Recovery is so important.
Sorry, can I just interject there as well? I would say you'll start to understand yourself what it feels like for you as well. I tended to do, when I was doing a lot of training, I tended to actually do a recovery or a rest day the day before a long run, because I was tired after the week of training and I kind of needed the rest before going out to do 20 miles. But then whatever I was doing on the Monday wasn't running. It was going to be something else that meant that I was either in the gym or I was doing yoga and swimming or something like that, that meant I was still giving myself time to recover, but it wasn't a day off after the long run. So it's a little bit depending on, one, what your week is like and whether or not you can afford to do it, and two, how you recover and what your recovery methods are.
That would lead on to my other question actually. One of my big learnings from my first marathon was that my strength training just did not exist at all, because just getting through what was a very strenuous plan really had me prone to injury if I wasn't careful. And is there things like yoga and Pilates, is there room for that in the plan, or do you have anything like that in the plan, or is that why there's flexibility there for us to shimmy that in?
Yeah.
The question is there room in the plan for other types of training, cross-training, yoga, Pilates, that type of thing?
Just to add to that as well, is it worth, because you mentioned before when you talked about the plan that there's 5 sessions spread over 2 weeks, but actually when you get to the detail, then there'll be more than that, so is it worth just sort of giving a view of how many times people are expected to run a week?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is it 5 training sessions on running?
So it's fun. So yeah, a session is something that is effort basically. So it's either going to be your track, your long marathon pace stuff, or your tempo based stuff that could happen on a Tuesday. Those are what are classed as a session. Anything other than that is easy miles. Technically, so on my first marathon, I did 3 runs a week, and that was it. A tempo, a track, and a long run. And all my long run was pretty much all of them bar 2 were easy miles. Just easy miles, building based, and that was it. And I did 2 gym sessions a week. That was it. It's doable to get through a plan with just 3 runs a week, as long as everything else is in line as well. I must caveat that I was coming off the back of ultra training, so I had a good base of fitness, etc. But it would still be doable. Does that kind of answer the question? Well, no, so it's more strength than that as well.
Can I add to that? Because Gemma and I have gone through the same experience.
Training buddies.
Yes. So for a first time marathon training person, if there is anyone here, I think for us the experience was following the plan. The running itself was so intense, just to do the long runs and then do the Tuesday runs and try and fit in a third run, that your body didn't have enough time to recover for the next long run. The only way I managed to get, and it was literally a case of checking on a Saturday, can I do the next Saturday long run, was by doing Pilates on every Monday for the 16 weeks that we were training. So every Monday was a Pilates, and miraculously by next Saturday I could do another long run, and that's how it sort of ticked for the 16 weeks. Otherwise I think I would have been injured quite quickly at the beginning of the plan, because even before you know it, we'll be doing half marathons every weekend. So for someone who's not done half marathons in 4 months gaps, suddenly you're doing plus half marathon plus distances. And for someone who's doing it for the first time, I think even if you can swap Pilates, yoga, swimming to one of the sessions, I think that's, for a first timer, beginner, a better way to avoid injuries.
Definitely. I think it's quite interesting if we can go, because there's a different experience on the panel, so it'd be quite good to hear what is most of your guys' normal week. I mean, obviously we've got a plan, but you'll find quite quickly that you don't necessarily follow that plan religiously, because everybody adapts it to suit their running and their timetable. So just open it up to each member of the panel. What is your typical training week? How many sessions would you do? Is that with Alice? She's not spoke yet, she's not like
So I'm taking it all in too, the tips. I am probably an example of not what to do, because I probably don't do anything that Tony has said, but I do bits of it. I typically run 5 times a week. I'm one of them that I am a little bit obsessed with mileage, so on average, probably on a high mileage week, I would probably have like 40 to 50. In a low mileage week, I'd probably have 30 to 40. So for me, when I started this pipe dream of running a marathon, it was, for me, I didn't know what an easy run was, I didn't know what speed work was, didn't even know what a PB was back then, which was fab. So for me it was just about getting the mileage, because that was my goal at the time. It was just running a marathon and being able to run 26.2 miles without stopping. That was all that was in my head. Now obviously that I'm 6 marathons down, and my goals have probably changed ever so slightly. When I went for my sub 4, which I got and I was delighted with at the time, I then had to look a little bit more about being a bit more savvy about when I was going to do my runs and recovery and stuff. Didn't quite get strength work in there, but I was a little bit more mindful of taking miles easier and marathon pace miles and stuff like that. So yeah, don't know if I answered the question there, did I?
Yeah. Can I just ask, because I know what you run, like, but you do a lot of run commuting.
Yeah.
So that's a way, like, if you are struggling to get time to get your runs in on an evening, if it does suit you, if your work is flexible or whatever.
I do a lot of run commuting because, as well, even before that, me and Vicky, we trained a lot together, and sometimes Sunday club runs didn't always suit me, so we did a lot of midweek long runs. Now, they're not for everyone, and they are stinking, but there's no way, two ways about it, or whatever was it saying?
No 2 ways about it.
That one. They're just not nice. But
they did make you go out on a weekend.
Yeah, but it meant that I could go out and get pissed on a Saturday pissed on a Saturday night, like, and that was my priority. So, yeah, just find somebody that'll do one midweek with you and you'll be grand. No, so they are hard.
What about you? What's your usual running week when you're training for a marathon?
4 to 5 runs a week, just because I value strength work and recovery. I'm a big fan of the cross training, just because of my background. I'll hit the gym, good 2 times a week, maybe 3, plus then the running. I would vary when my long runs happen, just based on when I could get company. It was as simple as that, and then I'll plan the rest of the week around that as well. But I'd figure out what is more important to me in the marathon cycle. Like, is it because I'm lacking speed? Then I want to really focus on the tempo and the track, that kind of endurance side. Or is it because I need my time on feet in the marathon pace efforts, and I'd focus at that time? Go on, Richard. I thought you were.
Oh no, I'm just actually itching.
Like you're really good.
I wasn't.
Tony, how did you fit in your strength training? Like, do you have certain days that you do it or you don't do it?
So the question was, how do you fit in your strength training? Do you have certain days that you do it on?
Yeah, I would. Some days I'd double day, so I'd either go, and it would always be on an easy day. So if it was easy mileage, recovery mileage, anything like that, is when I'd put in my gym stuff as well, because one isn't going to negate from the other. You can do a gym in the morning or a hard run in the morning and a gym in the evening, absolutely. But again, it's that balancing act. If you can do it on easy days, and when I talk about gym work and strength work, it's something that is categorically not going to make me stiff or sore the next day. It's going to be either just some light activation, rehab kind of stuff that you get from Nick or one of the physios, simple activation, or it's going to be really low reps, like 2 or 3 reps, but really heavy weights. And that's just normal stuff as opposed to genuine like hypertrophy where you get the DOMs, etc. Those aching muscles, which is usually what you want to stay away from, because that usually stops you from running well. Because every foot you plant, you're like, oh fuck, that aches.
There is the pack of hacks as well, so I'll make sure that gets reshared, and that was done from Nick and Tony's talk. So there is a whole collection of exercises you can do for strength and conditioning that isn't going to knock you out when you're training, but it is going to complement your running, and the main goal is stop you from getting injured. But moving down the line, I dread to ask, but Matt, how many days do you train?
Well, just to add that I'm the complete opposite to Tony. I don't do any strength work. I very rarely stretch. But I will generally run at least 7 times a week. A typical week, it's probably a bit excessive in the sense that I probably should on some days double day, but again, time of the day, lifestyle, I choose not to run twice a day because I'm lazy. It's hard to get up first thing in the morning and run unless I'm running to work. If I was mid training block for a marathon, what would a week look like? A Monday would probably be 11 or 12 miles easy. Tuesday, again, 10 mile easy. Wednesday would be what I would call a marathon sandwich session, which I realise now is the bread and butter if you want to run a fast marathon and feel good. So a sandwich session would look something like 5k at marathon pace, an example, 20 by 500 off a minute recovery, and then 5k at marathon pace. That's with a couple of miles warm up and warm down, so that's about 18 miles of effort in total. Thursday probably would be a double day because I work a long day on a Thursday, so it would be probably 7 miles to work and 3 or 4 home. Friday would be easy, maybe 6 or 7 miles, and then Saturday would on turn MOS reps, so it would be another sandwich type session. So it could be a 3 mile tempo, 24 400s off 30 seconds recovery, 3 mile tempo with a couple of mile either side, warm up and down. So that's about 18 mile of effort. And then a Sunday, we would probably build from 20 to 24 mile slow recovery running, and then start again on the Monday. So it's
because Matt's a very speedy runner, so that time-wise.
The thing that I've learned, so I'm 41 now, and I ran Yorkshire Marathon a couple of months ago. It's probably my best marathon I've raced, even though it's not my quickest. Just because I finished the marathon, I actually felt like I could have actually run a bit quicker and I could have carried on. And I think that's purely down to the training. And when I was a lot younger and a lot quicker, all my training was focused on sort of 10k running. So it was a lot of shorter efforts, very, very fast, again off short recovery, but I wasn't getting the mileage in. And it's, whether you're running 90 mile a week, 40 mile a week, 30 mile a week, you've got to stick to the plan. And I've advised quite a few people over the years, and I'm trying to think back to, listen to the different sort of stories, and one day on, one day off generally works. And I think it can work up to probably 3.5 hours. So if you're looking to run 3.5 hours for a marathon, I think that is achievable on, one day off. I think if you want to get a little bit quicker, you probably need to maybe 5 days, possibly 6 days a week. But it's interesting. I took one of Claire's friends a year ago, and she just did 5k runs around Termos. She wanted to run a marathon, so I sort of put her a weekly plan together. I didn't share the plan at the beginning, I just gave her, on a Friday I gave her the following week's plan. And that was one day on, one day off. And as the sort of weeks progressed, she got quicker. Threshold got quicker. She was getting a lot fitter. She went from running 8.5 minute miling to 7.5 minute miling to running 7 minute miling. And we got to marathon, and I honestly thought she could run close to 3:30. She's never ran a marathon before. She's been running 5Ks, never ever raced in her life. And she didn't stick to pace on marathon day. She got carried away the first few miles, ran 30 seconds a mile too quick. I think she won 3:45 in the end. 3:54, which is a fantastic achievement for first marathon. But again, that one day on, one day off was still tough. I was probably too hard on it, but one day on, one day off completely worked. Just stick to the plan, like I say. Whether you're running 90 mile a week, 40 mile a week, when you get to week 9 or 10, it's hard. It's hard. And it's like you say, I couldn't agree anything about lifestyle. If you're going out on a Saturday night, be honest with yourself. So I look at you like you Chelsea said, if Chelsea was going out on a Saturday night, she said, look, I'm going out on a Saturday night, I'm not going to do my long run on a Sunday. Well, okay, we'll do it on a Saturday. If you've got a busy weekend, then move your week around. There's nothing wrong with moving your week around. You don't have to stick to the plan in that sense. There is room for movement. And you have to be honest at the beginning of the week. You've got child commitments, you've got work commitments. You've got to manage your workload and your running life and your home life around that, otherwise it doesn't work. And I think the final thing is sleep. For all those parents out there got young kids, it's hard. And for me, I need to get 8 hours sleep. If I can get 8 hours sleep, generally I don't get injured, I stay healthy, and I run and I race and I train well. If I don't get my 8 hours sleep, it all goes wrong. So again, I've probably gone on a bit of a tangent with the full flavour of the question was. If that did cover the question.
I remember what I was going to say about now. So basically when you were saying about running with people, that was a big motivator. That was a massive motivator for me, not for my first marathon because I did that on my own, but I'm also a bit of an advocate for doing a long run on your own as well, just for the mental. Unless you plan on running your marathon with somebody, I find that what was great about joining the club was I was having all these long runs and these stops and this group of people that I was going to run with, but on the race day when my expectations changed and it came about, a couple of the marathons were about times for me, I found that having that meant someone I think it was Pete or something that said to me, try and do at least one tough long run on your own, just to have that mental endurance to see what it might be like for a race day. And I don't do it often, but I will go out and do a long run on my own.
So just carrying on down the panel, Andy, I know you had a tough time with injuries in the build-up to Loch Ness and some of the other marathons you didn't make it to, but what were you managing to fit in? Because you did make it and you did do a good time in Loch Ness. I know you don't think it was, but for a lot of us that's an incredible time that you did, considering that you hadn't been able to commit. So what were you managing to get in with your training?
I was trying to top Matt's distances up as he was talking about his average week, and I don't think I actually did the same distance over my whole marathon. Just how my face was just going at the time. So I guess going back to the initial question, I don't really have any normal in terms of marathon training because I didn't train really. I trained initially for Manchester, so I was part of the plan, followed the plan last time around, which I think is quite different to what we're looking at doing this year, isn't it? I'm trying to piece together how it fits, because last year's plan basically had, I think it was one rest day a week, which is why I'm trying to sort of look at how this one works, because it does seem like a really different approach, which sounds brilliant because I like rest days. But yeah, that's thrown me a little bit. So the last plan was pretty much, it was all based around club runs, so it incorporated Tuesday, incorporated long runs on a Sunday, track on a Friday, and I think Monday was the only real rest day. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it differs. But my training just went out the window last January because I tore my car for 4 villages, and then I didn't really ever get back to any sort of normality, so I only did one long run for Loch Ness, which was, I think Tony Payne drove me around about 19 miles on a Sunday. So I'm kind of, with like you guys coming into it, if anyone is kind of really sort of new to this, I'm back to square one with you guys because it's kind of really different to anything I've tried before. I think the big learn from last time, which is probably why I ended up getting injured, was not doing easy runs on your easy days, but actually really, when it is an easy run, then treat it like an easy run. So I think as a club we're generally pretty bad at that, to be honest. I think we tend to just sort of...
I think it's runners in general. I don't think it's just the club. I think we all get carried away. It's really hard. Easy runs are a lot lower pace than you're used to running, so it's hard to get into that mentality.
But I think it was a great way of getting easy runs in, because you can't be bothered when you're on your way to work. That's how I managed to stick to easy pace. It's great, unless you're late and then it turns into a tempo run. But yeah, I find that quite easy. Taking interviews, taking some photos, that slows you down.
So I can't remember what talk it was, but one of the talks that we had earlier this year talked about the importance of easy runs, and they talked about running in Africa with a lot of the elite athletes in Africa, and their easy runs were something like 3-4 minutes below their normal pace.
Wasn't it Ed the other week? Ed was talking about it when he talked about Kipchoge and the fact that they actually really do easy runs, so I think they are really important. Matt, I mean, I imagine you stick to your easy runs and your pace, you drop your pace.
Yeah, I think as I've got older, I've got slower. Well, naturally you get slow as you get older, but I think it's an interesting one because I know I used to train with Andy Jones, who's ran 2:15 for a marathon, and all his easy miles were 6-minute miling, which is a minute or so off his race pace. But then Nigel Martin, the local lad that runs for Sale, a 14-minute 5k runner.
He's got Sale water patch record.
He runs all his steady miles or easy miles at sort of 8:30, so he's following that sort of that Kenyan style lifestyle of easy runs, very, very slow. For me, I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I couldn't agree more with running to work. You generally start really slow and it gets a little bit quicker as you get closer to work, as the body weight wakes up. But normally, an easy run for me is about 7.5 minute miling. To put that into perspective, a 6-minute tempo would be an effort. Would be not threshold, but not far off. So I'm 1.5 minutes off threshold, which
I think it also depends on how often you're running each week. Because if you're only running 3 times a week, then you're actually getting your rest days in between anyway, so your body's getting a chance to recover. If you're running 5-6 times a week, then that's when the easy runs do become more important. I think just not getting over.
What I do find, and it might just be me, with marathon training, as you get fitter, your rest days actually, you start to run a little bit quicker without, just because your fitness has improved, you're actually running your miles a lot quicker, or not a lot quicker, but maybe 10-15 seconds than you was 3-4 weeks prior. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. So I think sometimes you can get carried away, but I think if it generally does feel easy, then it is easy. If it feels like, gosh, this is hard today, then I think the hardest thing as a runner is to run a bit slower. And I think that is sometimes the running in a group or on a club run. Maybe more for the younger guys and girls, where they tend to ramp the pace up a little bit. I think sometimes running by yourself or just with a friend or 2 people and having a conversation is a better way to keep the intensity lower, rather than the club run where sometimes towards the end people are trying to flex their pecs and see who's got a bit left in them.
Just on that note, if you are going to start using the club runs as easy miles, stick to the advertised pace. Just because you find it easy doesn't mean everybody else in your group does. So
going to stress again, doing the way of doing it, volunteer, take a lead out and stick to the pace.
I really like Matt's point there about the feel. Like one day or 1 week, your pace at 8-minute mile could be absolutely easy as bike gliding. Feel like you do it forever. The next week, you've had a poor night's sleep, been out with the booze, something like that. That 8-minute mile pace can actually feel quite hard. So just learning off that body as Matt would say.
I used to go up in the Peak District with Andy Jones on a Sunday, and we train really hard on Saturday. And some weeks Dave normally come with us. And it was I really enjoyed it when Dave came, because Dave would slow the pace down, but Andy was relentless. He would want to run at his pace, so he just let Andy go. But then Dave was running too slow, and Dave would bring his sandwiches with him sometimes. He was running up his marmalade sandwiches in his bum bag. Dave. But do you know what? Dave's won Manchester Marathon twice. He's a phenomenal marathon runner. But he would run at 8:30, and even now he'll come out and will be miles down the road and he'll just be running his own pace and he doesn't care. And that's the thing, don't, and I think I'm a little bit more that way inclined now. If people are going out for a run, they want to run a little bit quicker. It's funny actually, because I train a lot with Callum Rawlinson and his wife Ali, and Ali likes to run fast. And she is a fast female runner, don't get me wrong, but we're going for an easy run on Sunday and she'll be dropping us, and it'll be just like, we'll just let her go, and she's quite happy running 15-20 seconds a mile quicker, but it's just like, what's going on?
I think that brings back to something that Vicky said with the Sunday club runs. I found the last 3 marathons ago when I was training for London, I used to be around a 9-minute mile. So I went into that training block thinking that I'd naturally just fit into that again, but then slowly realised that I wasn't quite there. So having the group, there was a couple of times I set off and then I just wasn't feeling it. My head was going a little bit, trying to keep up with the group, pressure, different factors like that. So I just had an honest word with myself about what I wanted to get out of that run at the time, and it was to complete it. So I dropped back a few times. And the other kind of got swept up by the other group, which was fine. I still did it, still did the marathon, did great, but it was just great having that on a Sunday to help.
Just have from the last.
I think I'll be completely different from all of you simply because I think I've found joy in running where parents hate being in places like football matches. So when my son's playing, I go for a run. When he's playing for the 2 hours, if he's doing training for an hour, if there's a Zumba class, I go and do that. So what I've discovered or I've found is as long as I'm running and I'm doing the distance that's on the plan, I will not put myself through the pace pressure. Which is what I did in my last marathon training, which is where I think I got injured as well, quite a lot. If I had carried on just ticking the box of, yes, you've done so much of miles, and that's in your legs now, I think I would have had less mental pressure and physical injuries, which I think this year has been all about. Whenever I can get a chance to run, I've run. So I've missed club runs, I've missed Sunday runs, but instead I've gone and done miles around Longford Park for as long as the football team is playing. And that has seemed to improve my time by minutes, and I didn't even know that I was running faster in races till I actually did some of the races. So the pressure of the pace has just completely gone, and all I'm sort of focusing on is distance and recovery in terms of strength training. So those are the 2 things. If I can keep them going, hopefully.
When you started the publish, did you use VDOT or really about?
So the last marathon, yes, the VDOT, I think it was quite spot on actually from what they said was 4 hours 45 minutes based on my half marathon. But I realized I should have gone a bit faster based on the pace I was doing at the beginning of the training. But as the distance and the miles increased, my legs just weren't ready for keeping to that pace. Obviously that was the first, and I don't know if we have many first-time marathon trainers here, but it does take the toll on your legs to increase the miles, and I think what I would do is not take the pressure off pace, because those easy miles that everyone's talking about is what has actually given the legs more strength and taken away the pressure of injuries as compared to doing a certain pace-based long-distance run. But that's just personal experience. Hopefully it works this time as well. Yes.
Can I ask a question about it? You've done multiple marathons. How many did you run before you got it right?
So that question was, how many marathons did you run before you got it right? Alice?
1. I think 1. Because actually, I don't know all of them. That's a trick question.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever got it right. I'm going to keep trying.
Manchester was pretty
right.
right.
No, sorry. right as in time.
Yeah, right. As
Yeah,
in
two,
well,
sorry,
right,
two.
everything
So
right,
the
right.
first one I did, as I said before, it was just completely right. I'm going to do this marathon. No, you're not. Yeah, I am. Downloading that, did 24 weeks, stuck to it faithfully, like you wouldn't believe. Done the marathon again. Didn't know what a PB was. Didn't even know what a Garmin was back then. Or a gel or anything. So then I got the distance, that was it. Then I joined the club and it was all like, oh, marathons. Well, I'm not doing another one of them, they're ridiculous. So then slowly I just fell into doing the training runs because I wanted to do the mileage anyway. And then I just surprised myself naturally, I think, by just getting involved and everything. And then that's when I got 4 hours and 31 seconds. So then everybody was like, you could go sub 4, you know, and I was like, no, I can't, I'm not doing another one anyway, they're stupid. So then, anyway, so then I got into like the training again, and I was like, all right, okay, but I'm not going sub 4, I'm not doing it, like, that's stupid. And then I got it, I eventually got it, and I think that was just purely, like, I always put it down to taking the pressure off myself and the expectations and just running for me. But the thing I always say about marathons, it depends what you want to get out of it. I know there's a lot of this is geared up and talking about pace and time and PBs, and I get that is it for a lot of people. But I think I'm slowly starting to realise that, yeah, don't get me wrong, you can never take away my sub 4 and I'm still harping on about it 2 years later. But that isn't what it is about for me, and I don't think it ever is going to be what it is about for me. So I'm just going to hopefully keep ticking them off until my heart's content or until my legs give up on me.
So Tony, how many marathons before you got it right?
I don't think I've got one right.
Yeah. Matt?
So my first marathon's my quickest, but that's my worst marathon. I went out at 2:17 pace and ended up running 2:25. So at 30k, I was still on for 2:18, and I literally hit the wall because my training wasn't correct. Yes, I had a lot of speed, but I didn't have the strength to get me through at that pace. It's not until I started pacing that I started to understand the marathon a little bit better. You know, sticking to pace is what the marathon is about. If you've got the training in the bank, it's quite interesting when I turn up on marathon day and I speak to people and they're like, Mr. Pacer, I've been training hard, I'm sticking with you. And my first question is, what's your longest run? And they go, 12 mile. And I'm like, you might want to consider running a different pacer. In a nice, they were nicer than and I think it's interesting because I think, you know, I've been fortunate over the years to be coached by some very, very good coaches. And although I do read and I understand theory, I think it's from observing what's happening around you and what works for other people. And I think the reason I think my best marathon is my most recent marathon is purely down to the training. Religiously, I would run 3 hard sessions a week, and that's too much. You know, I think it's too much maybe for my age, but I think it's too much if you're marathon training. So I've reduced that to 2 very intense training sessions with a long run, and then a lot of easy running. And I think that's what worked this year for York, and what's left me now thinking that I can actually still run a PB at the marathon. So obviously I've taken a lot of positives from this year's build up, and that'll go into Manchester. And obviously I think I'm going to be vlogging probably the next couple of weeks my build up to Manchester. So, you know, fingers crossed. You know, I've been consistent as well. I've not had an injury for a couple of years, so that's all sort of helped me, you know, stay on top of my running and be more consistent in training, and then, you know, run quicker in racing as well. So yeah, I think it's my most recent, but the pacing has really helped me. I think the one thing I would say, so I'm pinching a lot of the time, is when you're running a marathon, what people don't consider is when you're back sort of in the masses, you're not going to race the race line. So what I'm saying is you're going to run over distance. So an example, this year in London, I paced a 3-hour group, and even though I'm on a championship start, it still took half a minute, 45 seconds to get over the start line. And in London, you merge again after 3 miles, so there's a lot of traffic. So this year at London, even though I was a 3-hour pacer, I ran 26.7 miles. So that's 0.5, nearly half a mile further than the marathon distance. So there was points during the race where a few people around me, and you can imagine a 3-hour group is massive, but people are saying, Mr. Pacey, you're running too fast, you're running too fast. And it's like, well guys, a 3-hour marathon is 6:49 per mile, but we need to be running 6:46, 6:45 because we need to take into account that we're not going to run the race line. So I think that's something you need to, I know we're all at different stages of our marathon, but if you're thinking I'd love to run 5 hours, just try and build a couple of extra seconds into your training just to take into account that you won't be running race line. Depending on the marathon you run, I think Manchester is getting bigger now, so I guess even this year I felt at Manchester that with the group getting a lot, the numbers increasing, there was a lot more traffic on the roads, and it is a little bit harder to stick to that race line, so it's something to bear in mind.
Took me 7 to get my perfect marathon. 7 marathons.
2:27.
I haven't got one yet.
I don't think I think that it's a distance that's not that easy, and you have to factor in that so many things can go wrong. You can have a perfect training block, and then you can get tonsillitis, or you can get a niggle towards the end. So there's so many things that can derail it. You do a long time for that one race. So yeah, 7 marathons for me before it all went perfect, and a lot of that I think was down to higher mileage, more consistency with my training, stuck the 3 main sessions, long run, speed work, that kind of thing, and then just lots of easy miles in the middle of it.
I think as well, just with the spring ones, you never quite know what the day is going to be like in terms of temperature as well. So like I did London the year that it was really, really hot. I mean, I did the worst training ever anyway, so it was never going to be good, and I'm used to running in the heat, and I blew up after about 10 miles, and that came out of nowhere. So if something like that happens, you gotta reevaluate your expectations. And you could literally, as Vicky said, you can have the perfect training. I've had the perfect training, and I still hit a wall at 18 miles because actually you messed up the night before food, you were nervous and you didn't eat properly or something like that, and it can throw it out the window. So I've done 6, I don't think any of them have been perfect.
I was just going to ask a question just because you mentioned food, but nutrition before your long run or before a speed session, or you're really tired.
It depends on the individual.
Any tips?
15 years ago, I couldn't eat before a race or for a long run. Now I can have 2 slices of marmalade on toast so I can run within 2 minutes. Andy Jones would drink a can of Coke and go for 20 miles and 60 miles. It's all down to the individual. Personally, if I'm going for a long run, I think you need some fueling. But again, it's how you're feeling on the day. There's days where you go up 18, 20, 22 miles, feel fantastic. There's other weeks when you start to get a wobble towards the end, and all you're thinking about is opening the cupboards when you get home, and it's normally hot chocolate. Although I don't have it when I get home, I always think of a hot chocolate with loads of squirty cream and a big flake inside. I never have it, but I don't know why I think about it. That's my go-to drink, although I don't.
I guess that's what the training plan's for. So practice what your race day is going to be like when you're doing long runs. Get used to what works for you.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, to a degree, know what works for me because I've run 3 marathons before, something like 4. But I just wondered if there's any other tips that work for other people before the night before your long run, maybe, or before a speed session, or really tired in the middle of your training.
If I've got a hard session coming up on a long session, whether it be track tempo, marathon paced efforts, Sunday long runs, anything like that, it starts for me the day before. If I'm really dialed in, then I'm not going to have pizza and chips or something like that the day before. I'm going to have something easy, simple, carbs, pasta, rice, things like that. Not too much meat, not a huge amount of veg, but just keeping it nice and simple, because then it's easier on the digestive system. Because if you've done marathons before, you've all been on the long run where you're like, crap, I need to go to a loo. And that can be slightly prevented by having a dialed-in day before. Likewise, hydration, really simple things that, we're all adults. We all know what's good food, what's not bad food, I hope. We all know that we need to drink water. We all know how we feel in terms of tiredness on certain runs and how we can prevent that from the day before and in the morning. The morning of a long run, I'll tend to just have 30 grams of porridge and some honey hour before, and then that'll do me pretty much.
I just think that, just adding on, I think hydration is one of the biggest things that people tend to not realise how much they need to drink, especially before. During isn't really that important, like you don't need to be drinking 2 litres of water on a long run if you're hydrated before you go out and you hydrate afterwards. But when you're actually out on the long run, especially if you're doing easy miles, you don't need to be taking on that much fuel if you fueled properly the day before. And as well, yes, you are increasing your mileage and yes, you are increasing your energy, but we're all runners, we all run on a regular basis. You don't need to double your intake of food just because you're marathon training. If you start like piling on the pounds, it's going to make it a lot harder to run, and everybody thinks, oh, I'm marathon training, I can eat what I want. You can to an extent. I mean, I definitely go home on a Sunday and don't think about what I'm eating, but thinking about like the whole week and meal prep and eating a better diet in general tends to make all of your runs a lot easier.
I think there is, again, in Coach's Corner, there's something that's been posted before in the files about nutrition, so it's worth having a look at that. There has been some things posted before.
I think anything you eat, if you have a curry and you've been out and done long runs and it's not been an issue, I don't.
Yeah.
I do you know what, I don't particularly think about what I eat the night before. I won't. This year in London, I went to Expo to pick up my number, and I needed some lunch. I got the train down, and I was like, I had some sushi for lunch, and I'm sat there eating sushi, and I'm thinking, I'm eating sushi for lunch. I wonder a marathon tomorrow. And then my mate works in Soho in London, and a big steak restaurant. So I'm there Saturday night having a big steak, and I'm thinking, I'm on a marathon tomorrow. I've had sushi for lunch. I've had a massive steak tonight. But you know what? The following day was fine. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is on marathon day, and I think especially when you get to some of these big marathons and you've got water stations, you've got Lucozade, you've got High Five, you've got all these gels and jelly, and you think, oh yeah, I'll have some of that. Do you know what? That's where people make mistakes. You don't train with a lot of this stuff, but because it's marathon day, you see, a jazzy isotonic drink, you think, I'll have some of that. If I'm being perfectly honest, in a marathon, I've never taken a gel, and it's very rare if I'll even take any water. But again, that's just me as an individual. The one thing I did do differently this year is in the build-up to York, I ran a 20-mile race. I think it was the South Cheshire 20, so it's quite undulating. And I didn't want to eat anything on the course, and I was just conscious that I might get a little bit, I might need a few carbs. So I bought some Haribos and I put them in my pocket, and every 2 miles I just ate a Haribo. And I actually felt really good during the race, and I finished the race and I thought, God, that was really good, so I'm going to do that for York. So for York, I did exactly the same. I went to Aldi, I bought 3 bags of Haribos, because what I learned from the South Cheshire was that it was a certain kind of Haribo that worked. And it was the Love Heart, because I think some of the smaller jelly babies, they break down too much and they're quite hard to swallow, and it was the Love Hearts. So 3 packets of Haribos. There was 8 Love Hearts in each packet, although I think one packet had 10. So I just filled my pockets until it was exploding, and I thought, actually that's a bit too many. And again, every 2 miles during York, I just had a Haribo, the Love Heart Haribo. And again, I felt fantastic, and I practiced doing that, but I only practiced once, and it could have gone horribly wrong, but do you know what, it actually worked, and I didn't have anything else during the race apart from these Love Heart Haribos, and again, that worked for me. It might not work for other people. I've never used gels, so I don't want to start training with gels and racing with gels, because I know you get that. I have taken gels in the past, and you get that massive hit of sugar. You tend to then go off pace because you run so fast, because you're high on this gel, and then you get a massive crash, and it's really hard to get back on pace. So I think just something, again, trial and error, but putting a few Haribos in your pocket going out for a long run is something you can practice week in, week out. Even stashing a bottle of water in a hedge somewhere, if you're going to do an out and back run, to have a little sip if that's what you need, especially if you're more of a spring or even a summer marathon. But I think you see people on a Sunday run with these big camel packs filled with water, and you're thinking, gosh, what are you doing? Or people with, gosh, it might work for you, but I just don't think you need. I couldn't think of anything worse than carrying two bottles of water. But then, if it works, it works.
But bearing in mind, if you're going to be out for a training run that's going to be 4 or 5 hours, you might need that.
You might need that.
Yeah, I think, for some people, if you're out for a lot longer, you do have to think about taking, or even sometimes factor in where you know that there's going to be a services or a shop
McDonald's
that you can go
to
into.
the toilet or something.
So can I just ask a question about the hydration? Because I've suffered in every marathon I've done from cramp from about 23 miles onwards. So I'm absolutely amazed that you say you don't take gels and you don't take water. But a word of warning, I think most of us would probably need water and possibly isotonic drinks if you're prone to cramp, and you'll soon find out when you start doing your long runs, because that's the worst thing when you're on track and you're on pace at 23 miles and you get cramp and there's no way back from it. Then it's too late. And I know that you've got to experiment with that on your long runs, because I need. I'm the opposite of you. I need a lot of water and I need a lot of sodium and electrolytes.
Yeah.
So I think you are an amazing, unique runner.
But the interesting thing is, during York, I was running with a gentleman, and from mile 2 he started taking water, and I'm thinking, gosh, you're taking water off him. Because for me, I'm conscious if I take on water, I get stitch. So I'm always thinking, even when I'm getting a little bit thirsty, I'm thinking, well, gosh, it's mile 10 now, I probably should take on a bit of water because I'm probably going to be a bit dehydrated in a while. So, but I'm thinking, well, no, because if I have a drink of water, I'm going to get stitched. I think there's a lot of sort of bad memories from drinking, but at the same time, it's really hard. And it's like you say, asking about when did you get it right, and it's so hard because there's so many variables in marathon running, and just one thing can turn a good race into a bad race. And the same with the training run. If you need water, you need sodium, you need salt, whatever it is, and that just takes time. And
and just there is some suggestions that particularly if you sweat a lot, and to do the sweat test, which certainly I'm going to do this time, where you weigh yourself before and you weigh yourself after to see how much, because some of us lose far more fluid than others through sweat. So that is something I'm going to try this time, because my big thing is I want to avoid the cramp, which is the most awful thing. I mean, I don't know if any of you experienced that. That was my question. And what do you do about it, really?
So Anne's question there is about cramp. So has anyone experienced cramp on their race days, and what have they done to combat that?
Yeah, Chester, I think 2017. It was the year when I was in possibly the best shape I've ever been in. I had a great run in from Manchester, Barcelona, and then messed Barcelona up. No fault, just bar my own. I travelled like I was going on holiday as opposed to racing. It was my first race abroad. The day before I was walking around the city with friends, just not resting, didn't have water, we wasn't eating properly. My bad. By about 14 miles in, I was like, oh. But that was 4 hours done. Got back and then got a plan from Colin. So that was a good plan to follow. 10 weeks in, went brilliantly. But Chester, I was aiming for sub 3, moved to sub 3 all the way to about 22ish. And then just as you're coming back in, cramp on the inside of my thighs. Never have I ever had cramp in my legs before, ever. And at that point, there's nothing you can do. You can stop, maybe stretch it off, you can grit and bear it, and that was all I could do to bring it home. Just grin and bear it. You just got to struggle through and hope you don't, you'll end up slowing down potentially, or maybe speed up. Quickest way to finish is to go faster and all that. But yeah, it was just a case of getting through it at that point. When you're that far in, there's not much you can do with cramp. When it sets in, that's it. From my limited experience.
I've had the same problem as you, and we've spoke about this before. My first 2 Londons, I got cramp really bad. This time I didn't, and I actually think I don't drink as much water as I used to do on my runs now. And it's just trial and error. I think for me, I've learned what works for me, and I think my big tip with that is fit in a 20-mile race, because there's a big difference between sort of running a race than there is when you long training runs, and I don't think I'd ever really push myself on the long runs to the same extent. And then obviously on race day you're going a lot faster, and that's when I got cramp, and I found doing a 20-mile run at race this time round, I mean, it wasn't going full pelt, but I was certainly running more as if it was a race, and I think that really made a difference because that was a chance to properly trial things out. So there's plenty of them around. There's probably a few that are suggested in the group that people have already signed up for, but a 20-mile race is a really good way to test everything out beforehand.
And I was going to ask about that, like, should we then taper in and taper out for that, or I guess that's going to be the challenge, isn't it, like fitting that in before the marathon?
I mean, your long run of that part of the plan will be about that distance anyway, so it shouldn't be too.
So you're just going to take it as a training run?
Yeah, I didn't taper for it. I think I'm pretty sure I didn't run the day before. It was on the Saturday the one we did? That canal one? I think it was on a Saturday, so I think that helped, and so skipped a session on the Friday to make sure we had a bit of rest beforehand.
Yeah, like I wouldn't go and do a track session and then try and do a 20-mile race.
Yeah, I think
like it's still in the middle of training, so you don't want to taper.
No.
You don't necessarily want to taper too much, but then depending where it falls in the training block, you might be okay to take an off week, do the race properly, race it as a race, try all the things you want to do, especially if you. Again, going back to what Alice said about what you're doing the marathon for and what you expect out of it. If you want to go and do a marathon, so say you've done it, get through the distance and come out the other side without being broken.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it's a very different experience to if you are going out to go as hard as you can to get the best time you possibly can, because that's when like trying things on race day or trying things in race conditions is going to benefit an awful lot more, because you'll know if suddenly taking something when your body's completely depleted is going to make you vomit or not. And just going back to what Anne said, like you say you take on quite a lot of water. If you are taking on a lot of water and you are sweating, you need to replace your electrolytes, because the more, I don't know if anybody else has had it, but I've had it where I've actually taken on too much water and I'm seriously ill from it because I'm so diluted essentially that you feel faint, you feel nauseous. It's really not a nice place to be. So if you are somebody who's going to take on quite a lot of water, I think that you need to take on other things with it. But now I don't take on very much at all in a race, because I make sure that the days before I'm hydrated. I'm drinking probably 3 litres of water a day for the week before a marathon. And then on race day I take on 200 mils over an entire race, and that's about it. So it just kind of depends. It's nothing that works, like something that works for somebody else isn't necessarily going to work for you. So just because it works for somebody doesn't mean it's going to suit your running or your training or your racing.
Just picking up on both yourself and Alice said about doing a marathon, is there a, how do people know whether to go for your beginner's plan, your intermediate plan, or your advanced plan? So what was the sort of guide on which one you should be following?
That's the question. So the advanced plan is quite high intensity, larger volume of miles. So I'd gauge at if you've done a 2, 3, or you've got a background in running in terms of maybe you've had track running, etc. You've been running for quite some years, and going up 50, 60 miles isn't a massively daunting number to you. Then I'd say have a look at the intermediate and advanced. If you know you want a time, go for advanced. If you know you want a quick time, 3:30 upwards, go for the advanced. Intermediate, you can play that by ear, and also to be fair, you can cross over intermediate and advanced. If you see a session on the advanced you'd rather do as opposed to intermediate, in terms of long running, do that. If your group is predominantly on advanced and you want to give it a whirl, experiment, I'm fine with that. Beginners covers quite a range, so it could be your first marathon, it could be your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 7th. You're still going to get the training done to complete that marathon. It's just not going to be overly focused on getting a time, so to speak. But the intermediate and advanced are more time orientated through intensity of the sessions and the volume of miles that you'll complete.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, something we've not covered yet, which I thought was really important in the first marathon talk we did 2 years ago. So I think you were probably the same as me, Malika, 2 years ago. The last month we completely lost our minds because we were worried about our nutrition, worried about our mileage, how we were going to race the day, and the mind games were possibly worse than the actual training. And we were really starting to doubt ourselves, weren't we? And everyone kept saying, follow the plan. But one of the key pieces of advice we got from that marathon talk was to have a plan A, a plan B, and possibly even a plan C, because you were so geared up towards your plan A that for me it was to run a sub 5, which for me was realistic. Oh no, it wasn't. It was like 4:45, but my plan B was sub 5. And I think that eased my nerves quite a lot. Do you guys work on that basis as well? Do you go into a race with a plan A and a plan B, and if it really goes shocking, plan C?
So Gemma's question there was about, do you go in with a plan, so an A, B or C plan? Anyone in the panel want to answer?
I tend to usually just go plan A, and if that doesn't go plan, then I'm just going to look to finish because I want the time.
I've used the 3-plan rule. I did that very much so for when I was going for my sub 4 because it was more, I didn't believe that I could achieve plan A. So then when I did get plan A, it was a good buzz from that. But I do find that helps quite a lot. But then in London, I still had the plan A, plan B, plan C, and I probably achieved plan Z. But I beat myself up about it quite badly afterwards. And really, it's nearly taken doing another marathon in between that, and then now training for my first ultra now to go back and actually be like, God, I wish I caught myself on there. It wasn't so bad, plan Z was actually London Marathon from a club, like it was amazing, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of like having them plans, they can really, really work, A, B and C, but also even if them 3 don't work, I'd still just be content and happy.
You're running a marathon, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. The statistics are kind of cool when you look at it, of the age range and how many people achieve all this and stuff like that.
I think it really depends on what your expectations are from the outset, because for some people it will be turning up and doing it.
I think it becomes worse because
it's just mind games for me. It wasn't necessarily the race day. On the race day, it actually
it was fun.
It was a perfect day for all of us, and it was crazy. But even just to manage your mentally the build up, to almost say to yourself, well, do you know what? If I don't get that time, it's okay because I've got a plan B. And if something really hurts and I can't keep up that pace, I've got a plan C. So it may be just for people that haven't done a marathon before, to maybe just, it's like you say, setting those expectations. It just helped me get a few extra hours
Use the
sleep.
Facebook page as well, it's quite good. It's always nice to see people struggling. Do you know what I mean though? Like, because you might, like you're not the only person that just can't be bothered, but like you get out and do it and it's good. It's good to see.
I think just on that note, it's another thing to try when you are doing the long runs and the training is learning to run to feel as well. That, like you said, that one day an 8-minute mile might feel like it's easy and another day it might be impossible or whatever it is that you're kind of running at. But if you can run to feel, it means if things don't go right on race day, you know your body and you know to reevaluate. You don't really want to just push through because your watch says you should, and then it becomes a seriously bad race as opposed to just reevaluating and you're 10 minutes off the time that you want it to be, as opposed to ending up in hospital. So learning to run to feel is useful. Like the last marathon I had 2 weeks of being deathly ill the week before, or the 2 weeks before. I didn't look at my watch to 20 miles. Because I thought there's no point, because whatever I'm going to do is the only thing that I can do. And I still ran a decent time. So your body knows what to do once you've got to the race line.
There is, going back on previous talks, if you look out for Stu's talk, I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was filmed, so it's on YouTube to watch back, and that talked about, what was it called, something to do with the mental side of running. That was all to do.
Folks' minds.
Yeah. So that was all to do with, it focused really on marathons and the mental side of that, and having a mantra, because often you don't need to go into the race with your A plan, start with your C plan, and if it's a good day and you're feeling great, then you can push on and be like, let's give B a go, and if it's all going perfectly, then move on to A, and that sometimes takes away that panic that when something slightly goes wrong at the beginning of the race and you're thinking, oh well, that's it, plan A's gone, and you kind of lose your will a bit then. But it's really worth watching that back, because that has some really good tips, because mine's half the battle with a marathon. I think it's really important.
I've always found plan C works for me, and then it's always a plan A that is at the end of the line, so it's always worked that there's a plan C, and then as you progress, if you feel better with it, then yeah, push more.
I think also, so I didn't know I was going to run the marathon until the day before. So I went up to Loch Ness just for the weekend at that stage, because I wasn't convinced I was going to be able to do it. So again, if it's your first marathon, I think going there with no expectations, just going to enjoy it. So don't worry. It's all about timings or pace. It's, you know, like Alice said, to actually just do it is a great experience, and it's something you should be proud of if you make it to the start line. So if it is your first, just enjoy it. You know, don't worry too much about what the day is going to be like. Just take the pressure off. If you've done the training, if you've done all the hard work of getting to the start line, that's 80% of the battle. You can do the run because you've done it already in the training. It's just not psyching yourself out in the day and just enjoy it.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
We say that a lot recently, don't we?
And that's my mantra. So don't look at where you were, don't look at where you can be, just focus on the now, and everything else will fit into place.
A couple of practicals that I always like to use is a simple training diary. When you've done a session, write it down what you did, how it went, how you felt. If it was a great one, you put a little green tab or something next to it. If it's not, you look at what you can maybe improve on the next time you come to do something like that. Because then in those taper weeks, when your mind can race and you can be like, I'm losing all my bloody fitness, just looking back, being like, oh yeah, that one, that was horrendous, I still bloody did it. Oh yeah, that one, that was great, that was 22 miles, tick that off nicely. Oh yeah, actually, yeah, I know I can do it.
I document every run because that helps me to look back.
But also, if you're planning on doing more marathons and you want that progression, it's good to see what's worked and what hasn't. And don't be a slave to Strava. I don't think you talked about that, which I'm surprised at. Don't compare yourself to other people's training. Your training is your training. Do what you can do based on the plan that you've chosen. Don't worry if someone's running faster, don't worry if someone's running slower. As long as you're sticking to what you know you need to be doing. Trust that.
I think, unless there's any burning last minute questions, I think we'll probably wrap it up there.
Just to wrap up, has anybody got on the panel, what's their tip that they would give to everybody? So if you were starting out in your first marathon, what would you tell yourself now, looking back?
Don't start with me, please.
Malika?
It's a mental game. You can do whatever you want, but as long as you've got the strength in your legs, the rest works as long as you're mentally prepared for it.
Nice. And
Ignore everything I've said tonight, it'll be okay.
Matt, what's your tip?
There's too many. It's interesting, isn't it? It depends if people are going for time or just to complete a marathon. You know, I think if it's just to complete a marathon, you know, stick to the plan, one day on, one day off, and just run at your pace. You know, if it's just about completing. It's interesting what you say about A, B and C. I think the old me, and as Tony said, it was just there was an A. I think as I've got older, there is an A, B and a C. And I think if I'm advising people, there's an A, B and a C as well. And I was just thinking about the last question, and I think for me, well, for everybody, the marathon journey is a process. And when I start that first week, marathon pace might be 6 minute miling. as I get to week 10 and 11, marathon pace becomes 5:50, 5:40, hopefully 5:30. You know, and if you're 9 minutes, it might be 8:50, it might be 8:40. So I think in terms of A, B, and C, I think if your goal is to run 5 hours, fantastic, stick to the plan. But as you're getting a little bit quicker, and you're thinking actually this 9 minute miling or whatever it is getting a little bit easy, then get a little bit quicker. But I think then, as you get a little bit quicker, don't lose sight of the focus was 5 hours, because you might actually be thinking, well, actually, I can probably run 4:30 now. So therefore, if you've got an A, B, and a C, it's interesting you went CBA, and I've often thought of CBA, but I think in marathon running, I think especially at the sharper end, it's hard to bring back time. So if you go out at 6 minute miling, to get to halfway and think, right, I'll run 5:30 now, well actually I'm only going to achieve 2 or 3 minutes at the end, so I have to go out hard. But I think the other way around, you can start to always stick to pace or a little bit slower and just get a little bit quicker over time, if that's how it's going to unfold. But I think if it's just about completing the marathon, stick to the plan, one day on, one day off, get the long run in, that's all that matters. I think sessions, they aren't the be all and end all. It's the miles. That's what will get you from start to finish in one piece. Sessions are just nice to have. I think one last thing before I stop speaking, because I've spoken a lot tonight, is I was involved in a pretty horrendous road accident a few years ago. Well, no, a long time ago now, and I was going to Rotterdam to run a marathon with a friend of mine, and he just wanted to run a marathon, and I think he wanted to run 4.5 hours. And at that point, I'd stopped running. I was pretty good when I was younger. I stopped running for work, and then I sort of started getting out of life. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll do some training. I'll come to Rotterdam with you. And as I started to get fitter, I thought, well, actually, I might be able to run quite fast for this marathon. And then I was involved in this accident just before Christmas. In fact, it was around November time, and my lung collapsed. So I couldn't run again until after Christmas, and Rotterdam is in April. So I still had 3 months of training, but because of my lung, I couldn't really run off-road, and so I just ran on a treadmill. I didn't do any sessions, I just ran on a treadmill for 3 months. And yes, I might have ran quite fast on the treadmill, but I got extremely fit from just running consistent miles at a consistent time on a treadmill. And I actually ended up running Wilmslow half marathon, and I ran 72 minutes, and I thought, how have I run 72 minutes for a half marathon? Because I've done no sessions. All I've done is a long run and just 10 miles every day on the treadmill. So we get to Rotterdam. I guess that was the story. We get to Rotterdam, and I thought, yeah, I'm actually quite fit now. So I went with the elite women. I thought, I'm going to run with the elite women. It's all on camera, so I'm running with the elite women. We get to about 11, 12 miles, and it was getting over, and I stopped. For some reason, I wasn't feeling too great before the race, and I've never done this before. I don't run with music, and I put my iPad in my back pocket. So I got to 12 miles, I stopped, I put my iPad on, and I just completed the marathon. And I stopped again a couple of times on the route to the finish. And I still ran 2:48, but I guess what I'm saying is you don't need to do sessions. Just consistent running is enough in itself to get you from one point to the end. But also you can achieve a good time in doing that as well.
I have thought of something that might actually be helpful more than my last comment, but things will go wrong in your training. Don't let that put you off. As Matt's just pointed out, you can have a collapse at the end but things will go wrong in training. Don't let that set you back. Everyone's going to go through different ups and downs on their training plan. It's your race, it's your individual. It's how you're feeling and how your body's coping that matters. It's not keeping up with the Joneses. It's what's right for you at the time. So don't be forced into doing that long run if your body's not right. Don't be forced into doing something that's going to make you worse. Listen to yourself and just adjust it.
I think so. The final thing, and I know it's hard going into spring because it's dark and it's grim outside. For me, one of the biggest factors is running off-road. So if you can get onto the Mersey banks around Turn Moss, it's just so much nicer on the legs. It's far more forgiving.
You did cross country yesterday, right?
Cross country yesterday.
And that was nice on the legs.
Well, yesterday was quite foggy, wasn't it? But I think I will do a lot of my sessions on grass as well. So on a Saturday morning on turn moss, yes, you're going to run a little bit slower, but it's also, it's all, if you want to work on heart rate, you're still putting a big effort in. So you're still getting the same out of it. But I think, what I found in the last few weeks is running on the roads. I've lost a little bit of my mojo, believe it or not, and also my legs. My legs are really feeling the last 4 or 5 weeks, and so I've now got my head torch, and I probably wouldn't advise that, but my head torch on them at night time now and again, and just getting onto the banks, because unless you've got access to daylight, it's, pounding the streets isn't great.
Can I just ask about that, Matt, though? Because it's the balance, isn't it? Because I did all my training off-road, but then I think, perhaps, I don't know, then you hit the road for the race, and it can be quite hard on your feet, and I wonder if my cramps linked to that. So would you say you still need to do some, obviously, road running as well, or do you think it's okay to just do it all off-road?
Personally, again, it's what works for you.
Yeah.
I like the fact that I'm running on grass, and if I go and turn up on a track and I'm like, gosh, I didn't realize I was running this quick, but I don't get the same feeling on my legs. You said we've not spoken about Strava, but if you want something that's a bit more forgiving on the legs, you need to get yourself a pair of Next Percents. Now that could be really controversial, but shoe choice as well. Hoka, the Cliftons are really, really good. They're really spongy, so I think they're really. The Carbon X's, they're a bit more punchy in price, but Hoka tend to be a bit more spongy in terms of a shoe. So I think again, it's a little bit more forgiving. But I don't find any. If I go from grass onto road, it doesn't really affect me. But again, it affects people differently.
Yeah.
I just love training, so whatever I'm doing, I just try and enjoy it. Even though you could be up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier if you went out with some of the dads, 6:30 in the morning, it's grim as hell outside. But if you've got a good group, or just a person, you're going to enjoy it. You'll have a laugh at some point, even though you're going through a really tough period of running. Try and enjoy it as much as you can. Easier said than done some days, but I run because I enjoy running, and I try and remember that even when I'm having a really shit time.
Alice? Be kind to yourself, because it's pretty mega what you're doing. Let yourself celebrate the success before you go straight on to the next thing, because it's pretty mega what you're doing, and enjoy it, because it's pretty mega what you're doing. Just have fun with it all.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys, and I think Matt's already mentioned, but he is doing a blog for the club, so keep your eyes peeled on the website. There's going to be some top tips, so there'll be more on the marathon stuff. And if you're not in the group, join the CR Coaches Corner group it's called. I'll share the link in the page. I think it's already been shared, but it's a great tool, even if you just want to have a bit of a whinge, it's a great place to go. All right, thanks for coming.
Thank you.